I'm just waiting for a few more people to join. Somebody was asking if my audio was on. Let me know if you have a problem hearing me. Thanks. Just waiting for a few more people to come in. Get started very soon. All right, it's official. We hit 100, so I feel excited about starting. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Lindsay. I'm the Chief Litigation Officer at Legal Aid Chicago. Welcome to Legal Aid Chicago's third session of this year's Legal Aid Matters series. Our session today is entitled MLPs Matter. You'll learn quickly that that's medical legal partnerships. This presentation will outline how legal aid uses 3 different MLPs to serve medical patients in need of legal assistance. Before we get started, just a few administrative details. First, please sign in with the link found in the chat to obtain CLE credit and to give a course evaluation at the end. We value your feedback. Second, if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please put those in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll address as many questions as time permits directly following the session. And third and finally, we will be recording this session and future sessions so we can make them available to those who were not able to attend. And the recordings will be made available at the end of the series with a copy of the PowerPoints emailed after the presentations. So now I am pleased to turn over the program to our wonderful director of our MLPs at Legal Aid Chicago, Mona Elgindy.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mona Elgindy, and I get to tell you all about one of the many powerful projects that we have here at Legal Aid Chicago. That is our Medical Legal Partnership Project, also known as MLP. At the end of this presentation, I know you will be as convinced as all of us who do this work that MLPs do matter, and you are about to learn how we can do so much for so many vulnerable communities here throughout Chicago and how you can support our work. I am the supervisor of our MLP program here at Legal Aid Chicago. This project is housed in our public benefits practice group, but works in close collaboration with all of our practice groups. I've been working in legal aid for almost 10 years now, and I came here to Legal Aid Chicago in 2021. What I can share with you from that experience is that partnering with a medical provider revolutionizes the way that we can help individuals who are undergoing serious health conditions that impact their daily life. Those health problems that would normally obstruct their efforts to access an attorney are now the gateway of how we can connect with them at a time when they need it most. I will get into a little more details about how we do this, but before I do, I want to introduce my co-presenters, who are some of the rock stars on this MLP team. We are 8 right now, and we will be 11 in a matter of weeks, because the demand for this work is growing and the results speak for themselves. Each of our presenters will share what their work involves and some cases where we have made a real difference for some of the patients that we serve. Henry Liu is a paralegal who works primarily within our Health Justice Project, where we partner with Erie Family Health Center. Karen Faisenfeld is a senior attorney who works primarily within our health partnership, Health Forward Salud Adelante, where we partner with Cook County Health System. And Carly Lochran is an EJW fellow and attorney who works with our Recovery Legal Care MLP that partners with University of Chicago's Trauma Center. The MLP model was created to integrate the work of both medical and legal professionals so that together we can improve a patient's health beyond what we can do working independently. It also allows us to go beyond the individual needs of a patient and gain insight to the systemic legal barriers negatively impacting the health of a community at large. In doing this work, I have learned quickly that patients are more likely to tell their doctors what life struggles they are dealing with, and this unique relationship allows us to get involved before a patient even realizes that a lawyer can help solve some of those problems. The first MLP of its kind developed in the 1980s in response to the AIDS epidemic and the growing demand to meet the end-of-life needs of HIV-positive patients. The HIV/AIDS Law Project was formed by East Bay Community Law Center in Berkeley, California. It offered assistance with disability applications and provided visits to patients to encourage them to continue their treatments. The East Bay Community Law Center still exists today and has only expanded to also include an additional MLP with University of California's San Francisco Hospital. In the 1990s, Boston Medical Center began to employ upstreamist techniques to address ways to help their patients suffering from chronic asthma when medical treatments were not enough. They reached out to lawyers to address the conditions issues related to mold in their apartment that were being ignored by their landlords. The New York Times published this story in 2001, and within 5 years, 75 MLPs took shape, and the National Center for Medical Legal Partnerships was founded. By 2016, there were more than 300 MLPs across the country, and Illinois had the third highest number of MLPs in the state, with 25. As of today, Legal Aid Chicago is home to 3 of those. The end goal of an MLP is to improve the social determinants of health for individuals and communities as a whole. According to the World Health Organization, social determinants of health are identified as the conditions in which people are born, grow, work, live, and age. They shape the conditions of daily life. These forces include economic policies and systems, social policies and norms, and political systems. This chart illustrates how these factors can have a profoundly stronger influence over a person's health and actual well-being, over 80%, compared to the direct healthcare that they actually receive. We see this reality in several statistics nationwide. African Americans are at a higher risk of diabetes, hypertension, stroke, and infant mortality than Caucasians. Women are at a greater risk of depression and are more likely to lead a single-parent household. Latinx and Blacks are twice as likely to have incomes under 125% of the poverty limit. Low-income individuals are more likely to lack education, have food and housing insecurity, and transportation challenges. With each of these factors taken into account in an already underserved community, the gap in health disparities only widens. To give you a picture on the local level, white Chicagoans live almost 9 years longer than Black Chicagoans. It all depends on your zip code in this city. You can see here where some of those disparities come from. This only became more evident with the COVID pandemic, which shined a bright spotlight on this painful reality. The world watched as we witnessed Black, Indigenous, people of color communities die at far greater rates than their white neighbors living in the same cities. So knowing this reality, we need a new way to address issues of racial equity in both our healthcare and legal systems. Health equity starts with racial equity, and race equity starts with equal access to justice. When lawyers are part of the healthcare team, they can address solutions to financial and food insecurity through public benefits programs, provide job security to protect rights of marginalized employees, and reduce housing insecurity and instability. Our ability to meet patients where they are at is one less obstacle to gain access to the vital services needed in their moment of health crisis. So just how wide is the disparity of justice for communities that we serve? Consider the following. In 2022, Legal Services Corporation's Justice Gap Study found that 74% of low-income individuals had at least one civil legal need, and 20% had at least 10 civil legal needs. That being said, 92% of low-income individuals with legal needs did not get enough legal assistance to address those problems, and only 25% of them actually sought the assistance they needed. Another way to capture the disparity that we're talking about is to consider how many lawyers are out there to address the needs that we've just described. There was one private attorney for every 429 individuals in the general population above the poverty threshold, compared to one legal aid attorney for every 6,415 individuals experiencing poverty. Now, these numbers are from 2009, but I'd speculate that the disparity has only grown. Certain communities have a compounded disparity when it comes to both healthcare and legal needs, and so we at Legal Aid Chicago know that an MLP can address both of them together. In 2015, the iHelp screening tool was developed to more easily help health providers assess whether a patient needed legal assistance, when it may not be obvious from what that patient will share with them. This tool has become the standard that we use across all of our partnerships. The acronym iHelp covers all the areas that we can help patients with. I stands for income and insurance to identify what resources may be available to meet a patient's basic needs. H stands for housing and utilities to ensure a healthy home environment. E stands for education and employment to ensure quality education needs and job security are met. L stands for legal status to protect all legal rights available to patients with legal barriers that can get in their way. And P stands for personal family stability to ensure a safe home environment with all the social supports needed for patients, families, and children. Reaching patients early is just the beginning of what we can do in an MLP. We also get to tag team with other professionals on the healthcare side with the patient at the center of what we do and how we do it. This commitment to holistic care has only proven to improve both the health of the patients served and the legal outcomes that we are seeking for our clients. It also provides a safety net across both teams to ensure fewer people fall through the cracks, and many of the legal needs presented are remedied before they reach a critical stage. And we have proof that the MLPs work. In 2016, when medical partners were asked what impact the MLP had on their patients, they shared that 1, people with chronic illness were admitted to the hospital less frequently. 2, patients more often took their medications as prescribed. 3, patients reported less stress and an overall improvement in mental health. In just 1 week here at Legal Aid Chicago, we can get 20 to 30 referrals for assistance from our partners. Each of these is an opportunity for us to reach a patient and talk about their social struggles, as they often don't know where to start. From anxiety they share with their doctor regarding a domestic violence situation at home, to a life-changing diagnosis and need for care and financial support, we and a social worker from the medical center can be their guide to navigate through it all. As a team, we can inform them of what efforts are worthwhile and what order of operations is best to achieve maximum benefits. In 2022 alone, Legal Aid Chicago received 564 case referrals from the iHelp screening tool. We completed 320 cases and consulted with our medical partners independent of those cases 311 times. I'm going to turn it over to Henry, who will tell you much more of how we do this with our Health Justice MLP.
Hello, everyone. My name is Henry Liu, and I'm a paralegal with the Medical Legal Partnership Group here. And today I will be talking about our amazing Health Justice project. So currently our team is made up of 3 different people. We have our supervisor, Mona, who just presented. We also have our other amazing paralegal, Fabiola Ramirez. Fabi, if you're in the audience, just shout out to you. And finally, myself. And today I'll be discussing what our project does, how we do it, and the many successes that have materialized so far. So the core of our Health Justice Project is our partnership with Erie Family Health. This is a nonprofit organization made up of many clinics across northern Chicago. These clinics are staffed by doctors, nurses, and medical providers. And these clinics very often serve patients struggling with both economic and legal hardships. This project was founded by a partnership initially between Loyola University School of Law and the Erie Health Center clinics back in 2010. And in fact, Erie is actually one of the first federally qualified health centers in the country to directly employ an MLP attorney to address legal needs for patients. 5 years after its founding in 2015, we here at Legal Aid Chicago joined this partnership to handle the ever so increasing number of referred patients needing legal assistance. And with this partnership, we here at Legal Aid Chicago are able to identify and help numerous individuals who would not have thought about seeking out legal assistance in the first place. So as you can see here on this map, the locations of the health center clinics encompass a large portion of northern Chicago, ranging from South Loop all the way to Evanston and Skokie. And because these are federally qualified health centers, these medical clinics are accessible to countless different underserved communities and mixed status families throughout this area of Chicago. At these clinics, medical providers hold regularly scheduled doctor's appointments with patients. And then during these appointments, patients have the opportunity to mention and divulge any sort of legal issues that they're currently facing at home, and that could be exacerbating their health issues. But because these are legal issues, they are outside the medical provider's expertise. So then these patients are referred to us here at Legal Aid Chicago to help. And this process has proven extremely successful. One of these clinics was actually able to refer over 200 patients alone to us over the span of 1 year. So just as our partnership serves a variety of different locations, our partnership also tackles a very wide range of legal issues, ranging from education to public benefits, all the way to immigration. Many patients are troubled by multiple types of legal issues at one time. So in response, many of our different practice groups at Legal Aid will oftentimes collaborate with each other to offer a very holistic and intersectional approach to meet these patients' legal needs. And what also makes our medical legal partnership so effective is our emphasis on the intersection between legal justice and medical justice. And this can really be exemplified by our successes with tackling lead poisoning issues in Chicago, which I will explain in our next slide. So one of our special projects revolves around identifying helping individuals exposed to dangerously high levels of lead in the foundation of their homes. The medical providers at Erie Family Health Center clinics, like all their doctors, regularly check their patients for lead levels in their blood. By themselves, these medical providers can treat the biological symptoms of lead exposure, of course, but there is little that they can do in the legal sense to help these patients escape these dangerous environments filled with lead. So fortunately, through our partnership, the medical providers have the opportunity to notify our legal team about these high lead levels immediately so that we can take legal action to mitigate lead exposure to these patients as quickly as possible. So this type of medical legal intersectionality, this example of it is really foundational to our goal of making our Chicago communities both healthier and more socially equitable. So now you know what this partnership is all about. Now you might be asking yourself, how does this partnership play out in the real world? What does it look like in practice? The next few slides will cover the step-by-step process of this partnership and how it really works. So our partnership starts with a conversation between the patient and then their medical provider. It could be a doctor, it could be a nurse. The patient will attend a regularly scheduled doctor's appointment, and then during this conversation with the medical provider, they will bring up some legal issues that they may be facing. And with the patient's consent, the medical provider will be able to refer the patient to us here at Legal Aid Chicago. And once the patient consents to being referred over to us at Legal Aid, the medical provider will make note of this legal issue in the form of a referral message, and then send this message to our Health Justice Project team through a medical software program used by most doctors in the United States for communication and helping and keeping medical records. And every week, our health justice program team will thoroughly review these referrals and then identify the specific legal issues within their situation, and then determine the department and practice group within Legal Aid Chicago that is really best equipped to handle those specific legal issues. The patient's contact information will be sent over to a legal aid attorney or paralegal to analyze and then provide remedies to the patient's issues. And then through this process, with the help from medical providers at Erie, we are able to initiate and really foster legal relationships with disenfranchised Chicago citizens who may never have sought out legal help on their own. It is also extremely valuable to describe our health justice project partnerships through the context of success stories. Just a disclaimer, any identifying information in the following stories has been changed to protect the client's confidentiality. So in one example, a previous client of ours, we'll call him Brian. Brian had his Medicaid terminated and had thousands of dollars of unpaid out-of-pocket bills. During a doctor's appointment at one of the area health clinics, Brian disclosed this legal issue to his medical provider. And with Brian's consent, the medical provider recognized that this was an issue that could be referred over to us here at Legal Aid Chicago, and then was able to send us that referral message. And through some analysis and investigation, our teams here at Legal Aid Chicago were able to identify that Brian's Medicaid should not have been terminated. We filed an appeal, we won that appeal, and we ultimately secured retroactive coverage back to the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So all of his out-of-pocket medical bills were subsequently paid for, and we were also able to advise him how to maneuver his Medicaid moving forward. Now, if you focus your attention to the red arrow here at the bottom, you can take a look at an alternate reality where our health justice program partnership did not exist. Due to the complicated nature of policies and statutes and all the chaos surrounding the COVID pandemic, Brian may not have understood that his Medicaid was actually erroneously terminated had he not received help from Legal Aid Chicago. And without this partnership, Brian could have been left with thousands of dollars of medical debt, and thus pulling him deeper into the cycle of poverty and stress. And so with our help, in addition, Brian's fear of unpaid medical bills would also no longer prevent him from seeking medical care in the future. The second success story exemplifies the efficiency of our program, as well as highlights the very wide range of legal issues we help tackle, as well as the very collaborative nature of our legal assistance. So in Clara's referral, this is the patient and client, her medical provider mentioned that she was losing weight while pregnant and asked if we could help her secure SNAP benefits. However, once we reached out to Clara, we discovered that unbeknownst to the medical provider, Clara's husband was actually tearing up their EBT card, that's a link card with food stamps, in a rage in order to prevent her from buying food without his permission. So immediately we recognized that this was a DV situation and that it took priority over her SNAP issues. So we reached out to the child and family group, practice group here at Legal Aid for their assistance. We had only proceeded with the SNAP application as initially requested, Clara's husband could have easily found out that she was applying for a new link card, which would have put her in even more danger. So within 1 week, our amazing child and families practice group here at Legal Aid secured an emergency order of protection for her and had her moved to a shelter. And at the same time, we were able to safely secure a new link card for Clara, as well as helping her to finally access her Social Security benefits, which we also later learned were under her husband's control. Currently, our housing practice group is assisting Clara in securing permanent housing while she continues to work with the child and families practice group to overcome this very dangerous and complex DV situation. So as you can see here, the revelation of just one legal issue can cause a massive chain reaction, revealing multiple different legal issues plaguing this patient. We were eventually able to use our very wide range of legal services here at Legal Aid to formulate a well-rounded approach to Clara's domestic violence issue, All of this stemming from just a single discussion between Clara and her medical provider at her doctor's appointment. And these two success stories really are just the tip of the iceberg of what we do here in the health justice program. They really show the potential that this program has in the future, and they without a doubt serve as testaments to the very powerful impact that our medical legal partnership has on the individuals and the communities of Chicago. Before we move on to our next amazing MLP group, for the attorneys in the audience, here is the CLE code, 99HV23. And it's also in the chat. And next up, we have my friend Karin, who will talk about our Health Forward MLP, a group that makes Chicago a better city every single day.
Thank you so much, Henry. My name is Karin Faisenfeld. I am a senior staff attorney here at Legal Aid Chicago's MLP with Cook County Health. We currently have two staff attorneys, myself and my colleague, Sophie Berry Hinton, as well as a paralegal, my colleague, David Mendieta, and who we work hard on a team with to make sure that this MLP runs smoothly. So I'm excited today to introduce this MLP, which is called the Health Forward Salud Adelante Medical Legal Partnership. So the Health Forward Salud Adelante Medical Legal Partnership is a partnership between Cook County Health and Legal Aid Chicago. Cook County Health is the largest division of the Cook County government and one of the largest public health systems in the country. It serves more than 1.5 million people each year through emergency, primary care, and specialty care. County Care is Cook County's largest Medicaid health plan. Legal Aid Chicago takes referrals from Cook County Health for patients that are getting care at Cook County Health or who are on the County Care Medicaid plan. Cook County Health Care Coordinators work at Stroger Hospital, at local clinics scattered throughout the city and county, or conduct on-site visits to patients' homes. Because of Care Coordinators' broad reach, our MLP reaches patients with health-harming legal needs from every corner of Cook County. And on the map pictured here, you'll see some of the sites of Cook County Health. So we have satellite clinics and hospitals located here. And the map shows that these are located not just in Chicago, but throughout the entire county. As previously discussed, MLPs use the I-HELP model to identify health-harming legal needs. A health-harming legal need is a problem that has a negative effect on a person's health and that is better remedied through legal and healthcare, not just healthcare alone. A classic example is a tenant whose apartment has mold, which aggravates their asthma. And while a doctor will treat the medical condition, the asthma, the patient should not return to an apartment with rampant mold. This is where a lawyer can help. A lawyer can advocate for a tenant with their landlord, fighting conditions issues in their apartment, and ultimately helping them live in a healthier environment. Because of institutional and structural racism, BIPOC people are more likely to have social determinants of health, which create health-harming legal needs. For example, because of racial segregation and redlining in Chicago, Black and Latinx communities are more likely to be located near high-pollution industrial corridors. For example, studies show that Black communities have a higher risk of premature death from air pollution than other racial groups, even when accounting for income. Studies have also noted that chronic stress due to discrimination also plays a role in shortening life expectancy. The American Medical Association defines structural racism as the totality of ways in which societies foster racial discrimination through mutually reinforcing systems of housing, education, employment, earnings, benefits, credit, media, healthcare, and criminal justice. These patterns and practices in turn reinforce discriminatory beliefs, values, and the distribution of resources. The Health Forward MLP is thus a racial justice project because we know that the prevalence of health-harming legal needs are deeply impacted by structural racism. And the majority of clients that we serve are Black and Latinx Cook County residents. In addition to the iHealth legal services we provide, we are very lucky to have special funding for a SOAR paralegal in our Cook County Health MLP. SOAR Works is a project specifically designed to help unhoused clients or those at risk of becoming unhoused who need help applying for Social Security benefits. Under our normal intake standards, we take Social Security cases only if the client is about to have a hearing in front of a judge. However, with SOAR Works funding, we can work on cases for unhoused clients who are just beginning their applications. This project is special because applying for benefits with Social Security can require a fax machine, an email address, and access to a computer, access to a mailbox or a mailing address, or simply a cell phone with enough minutes on it to talk to Social Security. So these barriers make it really hard for unhoused clients to get through the application process. Our SOAR project eliminates these barriers while also providing expertise on how to create an application that is more likely to get approved. I want to talk a little bit about our history. Legal Aid Chicago has worked with Cook County Health since 2017. And since that time, we have taken 2,299 requests for legal assistance. Of those 2,299 requests for assistance, we did a full intake with 2,066 clients and accepted and completed 1,272 cases. The majority of those cases were public benefits cases, dealing with issues like SNAP terminations, TANF issues, and Social Security applications or overpayments. Public benefits cases are the most prevalent cases that we see in our MLP with Cook County Health. And as I previously mentioned, we currently have 2 staff attorneys, myself and my colleague Sophie, as well as our paralegal David, who work on all of these cases together. But I also want to shout out that David also works on the SOAR project that we mentioned previously and works to take on those applications with unhoused clients. I'd like to illustrate a typical case study of one of our clients by walking you through the life of a referral from our medical partner. Any identifying information has been changed to protect this client's confidentiality. And the case study reflects a combined set of information taken from many different clients' experiences. But this case story is very typical of our clients. It shows how getting access to a public benefit like Social Security income can have a profound effect on a person's health, because access to that cash benefit ensures stability in housing. In turn, access to housing is crucial for maintaining mental and physical health. For example, having a safe place to sleep and store medication makes a person more likely to take that medication. So in this case, Dolores had severe mental and physical illnesses and had been applying for Social Security disability benefits for years without success. Dolores was at risk of losing her housing because she couldn't pay her rent. She relied on friends and family to help her pay rent, but this was unsustainable. The first step in the referral process is Dolores comes to Cook County Health and goes to a satellite office for mental health care support. After talking to her doctor, Dolores meets with a county care coordinator named Sandy. Sandy screens Dolores for health-harming legal needs and discovers that Dolores doesn't have income because she's never been approved for Social Security. Step 2, Sandy explains that Dolores might be eligible for free legal services through the Medical Legal Partnership with Legal Aid Chicago. Dolores signs a release of information form allowing Legal Aid Chicago to reach out to her, and Sandy emails the form to Health Forward caseworkers. Most of our referrals come from care coordinators who work for the County Care Medicaid plan. However, we also take direct referrals from Cook County Health staff. This usually includes social workers and nurses. Since the COVID pandemic began, we have been functioning at full capacity, albeit remotely. We take referrals through 3-way conference calls with hospital staff or care coordinators, or via email with a signed release of information. However, we do anticipate being on site again soon. Step 3 of the referral process is that a health forward caseworker receives the email referral and logs Dolores's basic information. Then we reach out to her to do an intake interview. Care coordinators are a great asset to our medical legal partnerships, and really what makes these partnerships so unique. When a patient first applies for Social Security benefits, they often do not have the evidence they need to prove their case, and most initial applications for SSA benefits are denied. Once we accept a case for representation, we work to get all the medical records that a client needs to give to Social Security. In Dolores's case, we also hired a third-party psychological examiner who created vital evidence to prove Dolores's disability before the Social Security judge. But most importantly, the care coordinator, Sandy, helps Dolores get CTA bus cards so that she could get to the psychological examiner's appointment and helped coordinate day of logistics with Dolores. This wraparound service made it possible to get all the evidence that we needed to present to the judge. We represented Dolores at her Social Security hearing, and we won her case. As a result, she received $975 in SSDI going forward to be paid out each month. She also won $34,000 in back-owed SSDI benefits. This cash benefit helped Dolores preserve her housing, which helped stabilize both her mental and her physical health. Accessing a public benefit like Social Security income can have a profound stabilizing effect on a person's overall quality of life, and especially their health. To wrap up our presentation on the Cook County Health MLP, I want to discuss our current numbers so that you can get a sense of what we're doing right now. Each of these cases represents the type of case outlined in the case study about Dolores. In 2022, we received 222 new referrals for legal help. We accepted and completed 203 cases, and more than half of those cases were public benefits matters. We also provided several consults. These are legal issues where we cannot do an intake with the client because the legal issue isn't an area of law that we work on. But we provide general information to the patient's caseworker or referrals to a different legal aid organization, so that any time that a patient contacts us, they walk away with something of value, even if we can't represent them on their legal case. Importantly, we also have bilingual staff in the Health Forward MLP, and we do provide legal services in Spanish. We are also able to use interpretation services to help clients in most languages, if the patient speaks a language other than English or Spanish. And with that, I will pass the baton on to Carly, who will talk about the Recovery Legal Care Project at University of Chicago. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks, Karin. Hello, my name is Carly Loughran, and I'm an EJW Fellowship Attorney at Legal Aid Chicago. And I'm going to be talking about our newest MLP, Recovery Legal Care. We have two attorneys at this MLP, myself and Isaac Green, and our project just launched this past November of 2022. So Recovery Legal Care is a MLP, a medical legal partnership between Legal Aid Chicago and UChicago Medicine's Level 1 Trauma Center. The goal of this MLP is to provide civil legal services to individuals after they've experienced intentional violence, so specifically gun violence. As many of you know, gun violence is a massive issue in cities across the country, including in Chicago. The University of Chicago is the only Level 1 trauma center on the South Side, which means it's at the epicenter of our city's gun violence issue. In Chicago, 30% of homicides due to gun violence happen within 5 miles of UChicago Medicine. The Trauma Center treats over 3,000 violently injured adult trauma cases a year. Individuals experiencing gun violence are pouring into UChicago Medicine. And while this can be overwhelming, it also provides a really unique opportunity for intervention, especially for a population that's been given good reason to mistrust lawyers and the legal system. Survivors of violence disproportionately come from BIPOC communities. Nationwide, Black men are 14 times more likely than white men to die from gun violence. Many victims of gun violence may not feel comfortable reaching out to an organization like Legal Aid Chicago on their own, even when they have real civil legal needs. And survivors of gun violence have real needs. One study found that between 74 to 85% of survivors of violence required assistance obtaining food, getting safe housing, financial entitlements, and other services. These are needs that may have underlying legal issues that Legal Aid Chicago can help with. After being shot, many survivors of violence are not in the headspace to figure out how to get legal help and don't have the bandwidth to navigate really complex systems on their own. And so that's where Legal Aid Chicago comes in. By embedding lawyers into the trauma center, we hope to catch and reach a population that's underserved at a time when their need is most acute. We hope that by going to them, by appearing at bedside, we can help legally stabilize them so they can focus on what's most important, recovering from their gunshot wound and hopefully decreasing the chances they experience gun violence in the future. So this is a novel program. It's one of the first of its kind to provide legal services in this way. As our other MLPs at Legal Aid Chicago can speak to, incorporating lawyers onto medical teams can be difficult. This is especially true in the trauma center. Engaging with folks right after they've been shot can be very tricky. And so that's why it's incredibly important to be working with the right medical partners. When building this partnership, I started by reaching out to UChicago's HVIP. HVIPs, hospital-based violence intervention programs, are present in hospitals across the country, including at UChicago. HVIPs are made up of a team of violence recovery specialists who, like us, are committed to addressing risk factors for future violent injury. They also want to make sure that survivors of gun violence don't get shot again. Violence recovery specialists are trained in psychological first aid and rapport building. By embedding lawyers into an HVIP, we're able to learn from them and piggyback on the trust they've already established with patients and the community. And this trust building is incredibly important given the population we're working with and when we're getting integrated into their care. So on this picture to the right shows Christine Goggins, one of the violence recovery specialists we work with. By being on a team with people like Christine, by working with the correct medical partner, we're able to integrate more seamlessly into the hospital setting and into patient care. Furthermore, while we have a lot we can learn from the violence recovery specialists, we're also able to provide them with legal training so that they can be better advocates for their patients, and the overall impact of the program is kind of expanded. And so that's really the true value of a medical legal partnership, that we're able to work together, learn from one another, and be innovative in a multidisciplinary way. So to paint a picture of the impact of this partnership, I want us to follow a case example through the Recovery Legal Care MLP. So our patient, Eric, and his case have been altered to preserve confidentiality, but we receive many cases with facts similar, if not identical, to this case every week. So to start, Eric experienced a disabling gunshot wound. In an instant, his life was changed and his health was drastically impacted. Eric was rushed to UChicago's Trauma Center. Christine and her team of violence recovery specialists met Eric as he came through the trauma bay door and began providing psychological first aid to him and his family so that he could feel safe and they could start to navigate what had just happened to them. So Eric received life-saving medical treatment, and once he was medically stable, he was moved to a bed in the trauma center's ICU. While Eric's life-threatening medical issues had been addressed, his journey to recovery had just begun. New issues and worries started flooding through Eric's head. Worries like, am I going to be able to go back to work on Monday? How am I going to afford food? Will I walk again? Eric was at significant risk of becoming homeless because he had no idea how he was going to pay for rent. On top of dealing with a very traumatic event and severe medical issues, Eric was worried because he didn't have a plan. How could he? In the first few days in the hospital, medical staff went to Eric's bedside and conducted an iHelp-based legal screener. This screener describes legal problems that Legal Aid Chicago can help with. So the burden isn't on the patient or the medical provider to know that there is a legal issue. If a patient screens positive, if they have a legal issue we can help with, The legal screener and patient information, like their room number, is sent over to the legal team. It's sent to Isaac and I. So Eric completed a legal screener and screened positive for a number of different legal issues, including requiring assistance with a protective order, SNAP, disability, and criminal records relief. His information was sent over to Legal Aid Chicago, and the very next day, only days after Eric was shot, I went and I visited him in the hospital. So at bedside, I was able to talk with Eric and start to alleviate some of his anxieties. We started to make a plan. We started with what was most important to him, his safety. Eric was worried that the person who injured him would come after him again. I was able to talk with him about his options for getting protective orders and advise him on how to navigate working with law enforcement. Also, in our very first encounter, I was able to enroll Eric in SNAP and advise him on his disability eligibility. Instead of being discharged with no plan of how he would even be able to afford food, Eric had a link card with food stamps on it waiting for him when he got home, a Social Security appointment requested, an attorney to make sure that everything went smoothly, and he received the full amount of benefits he was entitled to. In addition to addressing Eric's immediate needs, such as food and safety, we are also able to refer him to our pro bono and community partnership groups, where he was connected with an amazing pro bono attorney who helped him get an expungement. Now, if Eric is eventually able to go back to work in the future, his criminal record won't be a barrier for him getting employment. So again, Eric is just one example. The Recovery Legal Care Program receives 6 cases similar to Eric's every week. And the only reason we aren't referred more is because there's only 2 people on this partnership right now. Violence can be really emotionally paralyzing, both on an individual and a societal level. Programs like Recovery Legal Care are one way individuals who are invested in addressing gun violence can get involved and provide tangible support to survivors, help stabilize folks, and ultimately decrease the likelihood a person gets shot again. So with that, I will pass it back to Mona.
Thanks, Carly. So here is a heat map that shows all the cases that we worked on by zip code in 2022. The darker colors signify where most of our cases come from, with 12 to 17 cases in the dark red, and the colors get lighter as the numbers decrease. What is obvious from this map is that we take cases from across Chicago, and we definitely focus our work on the neighborhoods where the most need is there. A picture says it all, to show how MLPs really do matter and can make a difference beyond the patient and the client. Thank you all so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Mona. I think it's back to me for a moment. And really, thank you, Mona, Henry, Karin, and Carly for an amazing presentation about really important, really innovative work that's going on at Legal Aid Chicago. It's really exciting. Look forward to hearing more about all of it. By way of reminder to all of you who are in attendance today, you can help support this and other work at Legal Aid Chicago by volunteering, by joining our ambassadors board, by attending our luncheon coming up on June 13th, for which there's still time for firms and companies to sponsor the event. And of course, you can always make any donation of any size, which will help continue our work for equal justice and ensure our clients get the help and access to justice they deserve, whether they be clients we can serve through the MLPs or otherwise. So that concludes the planned content portion of today's presentation. Mona, in just a moment, is going to field questions that may have been asked in the Q&A, or if you have more questions that come in. First, a quick reminder, we do appreciate if you could fill out the survey about the presentation. So to do that, and if you'd like CLE credit, click on the link in the chat to fill out the form. And we look forward to seeing you next week for our final session this year, called The Right Time for Right to Counsel. And I'll turn it back to Mona to take some questions.
Thank you, Dan. So we've got 2 questions here, and I can address both of them. The first question is curious about the intake process at Erie. Do the medical professionals affirmatively ask patients if they have any legal problems, or do they just wait for patients to raise their legal issues? So I think it's a mixture of both things that happen. We will regularly do trainings with our medical providers to update them on the cases that we're taking. And there is a paper form, or I'll say an electronic form, in the medical record system they use, that they have like a checklist of what things that we take, so that in the training, when we talk about what are the kinds of things like inability to pay bills or the iHelp model that we train that form to be used, they can then send those cases to us, and then we can kind of do a deeper dive to see if there is a legal remedy to that issue, or if there isn't, who is the best place for them to do that work. So we've got forms that the medical providers use. I imagine when they're familiar with the patients, they can also ask them questions if they do have legal issues. But I will just say a lot of times people don't realize it's a legal issue, which is why our training of the medical providers is so important, so they can spot kind of the keywords to pay attention to, and just other things that we'll send them to be on the lookout for. The next question is, are there social workers involved with these clients? So yes, there are, and we have that both at Legal Aid Chicago. We have our own unit that has social workers when we do accept a case and the need is not met by another social worker. But I will say one of the kind of valuable things that we have in these partnerships is there are social workers, community case managers on the medical partner team that are already working with those patients. So a lot of times it's best to work with who they already know. And then we can kind of coordinate our services together, so we're not doing the same work, and we can focus on the legal side. Like the social worker will say, we submitted an application, we haven't heard back. We can kind of take over and determine, is it worth filing an appeal or doing something further? So we definitely don't want to be repeating the services, but we work in tandem. And I see another question, is Legal Aid Chicago going to partner with other hospitals? So we definitely would love this model to grow, and we don't really have any reservations as far as those opportunities. I think the biggest thing that we always come, to realize is a matter of getting the funding to do it. We have been very fortunate for these MLPs to be funded usually by grants that the hospital providers will get, and then they'll reach out to us and we'll find a way to use those resources that they get in the funding to make the MLP work. And then I will say in 2 of our 3 MLPs, when the grant funds ran out, the successes were so evident that the medical providers began to fund us directly. And so that is happening with our Erie Family Health Project, as well as with our Cook County Health Project. I see here, what are the steps for a person to volunteer on a matter such as this? So I may turn that question over to you, Dan, if you can answer it specifically, and I'm happy to add kind of when we do have volunteer attorneys, how that works, because we do have volunteer attorneys who help us in the MLP project.
Well, certainly you can always reach out to Melissa Pachola, the head of our Pro Bono and Community Partnership Group, and you can get her information for that contact on our website. Mona, I don't want to also offer for you that people could also contact you directly. That's up to you. Okay. I don't want to tell people they can do that. I leave that to your discretion.
And honestly, like, I have no issue with that in directing people, because we do have a unit, of course, at Legal Aid Chicago that handles that. However, if the only way you know how to get through is through me, by all means do so. The more volunteers we have, the more people we can access. And that is really the only place where we have a need, is we're only so many staff. We can only reach out to so many people. And as you can imagine, I mean, we get way more referrals than we can keep. So the more people that are willing to help out, we will definitely make it work.
And somebody asked another administrative question about getting videos. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I believe that the recordings for all these presentations will be made available at the end of the series in a week or so. So if you missed part of today's presentation, you can catch that later. So I think we've covered all the questions. I just feel like before we go, I have to say the thing that always comes to mind when I think about MLPs and how great they are, they're win-win, or maybe better put, they're win-win-win, right? They're win for the medical providers, they're win for us, they're win for the clients of both. So they're really just an effective, cutting edge approach that our team's doing a great job with. So thanks again for that presentation. Thank you all for attending and joining us today. Hope to see you next week and at our luncheon. And so we'll say goodbye now and give you 4 extra minutes back.